Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here at Activate Learn on Twitter. It is time for another book review, and it is the first book for 2021, even though I read this book quite late in 2020, that wonderful year, and I thought I'd end it on a positive note. Yeah, right. And talk about Daniel Susskind's new book called A World Without Work, Technology, Automation, and How We Should Respond. Now, this book was published in 2020, early 2020, and I bought it straight away simply because I like this author. I read his previous book, The Future of Associations, which is also great, and I highly recommend it. What I didn't know was that he was an economist, and reading this book was really good to get it from a perspective of what an economist thinks about a world without work and how technology and automation will change the way we think and do work in the years to come. Now, in the book, he does say it's not going to happen tomorrow. So, okay, hold your horses, which is something he also introduces the book and says are humans going by the way of horses back in the past when horses were used for transport and agriculture, but then in came technology and put the horses out to pasture. So you got to wonder, are humans being put out to pasture here? Which then also reminded me of a video called Humans Need Not Apply, which was also created about 2014 about this very thing. Well, anyway, Daniel introduces this concept of what will humans do in the near future. But hold your horses, it's not happening tomorrow. He's saying in decades. So it might happen in our lifetime. So what is this book about? As I mentioned, it's the economist's view. What I love about this book, though, he doesn't present it one way. He presents the facts, he presents what's happened, and then he kind of gives a for and against. Not even a for and against. This is what it could be, but have a think about this aspect too. So two different sides of the coin, so to speak. So I love that approach. Now, the book itself is split into three parts. As I mentioned, he does the introduction around humans going by way of horses, possibly. But the next three parts, basically how he's done it is he sets the scene, he sets the context, then he talks about the threats, and then he talks about what are the responses we need to do. So the context, he puts it all into context for us, and he talks about, is this a misplaced anxiety? Are we making a big hoo-ha about robots taking over our work? And he then challenges us to think about the age of labour, which we were in before, and how that is really changing. He talks about the pragmatist revolution, and I like this idea where he talked about the technology pragmatists and he talked about the technology purists. Now, the technology purists are the people who love the technology and want the technology for public social good and, or, you know, for everything good that it provides back into the community. Think of the Tim Berners-Lee approach to how he wanted the internet to be. But then the technology pragmatists are, I guess, the people who really sit back and think, well, you know, we can actually make something of this technology. They could be the Microsofts, the Googles of this world who are thinking of, you know, changing work or changing things as we know it. And these two, the pragmatists and the purists, seem to clash. Now, as I was reading this, I thought to myself, you know what? I have a very idealistic view of technology. For me, technology has helped me with my work. It's helped me connect with so many people. It's helped me learn. It's helped me do stuff like this, which never in a zillion years would I have thought it possible. But at the same time, my idealistic view of what I see is really happening in business, in the marketing world, in the cybersecurity world, in just basically the world, makes me think that the pragmatists are the ones who are going to win this out in the end. And if the technology pragmatists, I guess, can, you know, take over, which is what's happening, what will it mean for our work that will be changing? I don't think we could be so idealistic all the time to think it's always going to be used for social good. There's going to be some elements. So I like how he presents these 2 points of view. He then talks about underestimating machines, and he talks about it from the point of view that originally machines were thought of as complementing the tasks that humans would do in their work. And I'm seeing this right now in our work. I don't know about you, but I'm automating a whole heap of routine tasks that I don't want to do because they take up my time, and I'm using things like Microsoft's Power Automate or other automating software to kind of streamline that process, okay? But he's saying that over time, machines are going to be used less for just complementing humans and more substituting humans, because not only would they be doing the routine tasks, they'll be doing the non-routine tasks that we kind of take for granted. Okay, so therein lies a great introduction to part 2, which is the threat, and he opens it up with task encroachment. And he sets a scene with regards to, well, what is happening within our work. Our tasks are divided into what is routine, what is task-based, what is repetitive, that can be automated quite easily. But then there's the non-routine work. The non-routine work are things like the creativity aspect in your role, coming up with really innovative solutions through complex problem solving, maybe coordinating and collaborating with your colleagues and coming up with new ideas. So that's the non-routine, real value added stuff. But he's saying that machines over time will be doing that as well. So with that premise, then you've got to ask yourself, well, if machines are doing the non-routine and also the routine, what am I here for? What am I going to do? And that then leads on to the other threats that he talks about, which is around technological and frictional unemployment. The fact that we're going to see our work hours reduce over time simply because the machines, algorithms, whatever you want to choose to call them, are doing more and more of our tasks, which then frees us up either to find new work or to reskill in new work, or even to continue doing what we're doing, but doing them in another place or another location. And he does say that the unemployment, we're not going to have a steady unemployment in one area. All countries have the unemployment at different rates, and we're going to experience it in different rates and at different times. As such, we're already experiencing it now, which then results in technology inequality. And the inequality is all about how the technology will basically create some inequalities that we're already currently seeing. So as a result, the inequality could impact certain groups, certain minority groups more than others. Now that was part 2. Then he goes into part 3, is the response. He starts it off with education, of course. Now education, there are fors and against. Mainly, is education really up and ready for facing what we are going to face in the coming years? He talks about the big state and the need for us to kind of change our view from one of production, and it's all about labour value for production, and more about distribution, but also contribution in the community, and coming up with very new economic models that are all about measuring and supporting people to contribute within the community and get benefit from the community based on what they give and put into the community. So completely different economic model. Also things like restructuring the tax regulations and the tax ruling around tax avoidance for big companies like the big Googles and the Apples who don't claim any taxes, and then somehow creating a universal basic income, but he said with conditions, because a universal basic income, he was stipulating and hypothesizing that itself would also bring some questions and some problems in itself, Namely, the first one is, how do you define a citizen? How do you define a citizen who will get this universal basic income? And also, what are the questions around everyone getting a universal basic income regardless of their income? So he talks about a universal basic income with conditions, and those conditions would need to be sorted out by some kind of new government body, and this government body to be not just economists and politicians, but people from all walks of life, people who have got different skills and could, I guess, debate what this new state, this new big state would look like. He then, the very last point, was challenging us to think about changing our meaning of work. The fact that work was what gave many people meaning and purpose in their lives, and how we focused a lot of, 8+ hours a day just on our work. But what would happen in a future world where we don't have those hours anymore? What are we going to do with our time? We can go back to school, we could work in the community, we can volunteer, and so this really got me thinking, and I asked that question on Twitter as well and got a whole heap of responses. So I'll leave the link to that tweet thread for you to have a read. And it was really interesting to see what people would do if you didn't have to work, if you were somehow, what would you do with your time? And a lot of people, some of the responses were that they would still work but on reduced hours, or they would volunteer their same knowledge and skills back into, say, a not-for-profit organisation, or put it back into the community. Others would say that they would go back to school and be a continual and lifelong learner, which is, I must admit, that was something that I would definitely do. Others wanted to do something completely different and reskill in a completely new area, but then put these new skills back into a community project. So already people are thinking, and there's a real, for me, I have noticed a big change in the last year, that people have moved from just thinking about workplace work and thinking about, well, what is it that I can do going forward now? What is possible with regards to work? And maybe this mindset is what we need to get people to, I guess, be comfortable with the idea that work will not be like how we knew it back in 2020 or earlier. It's completely different. And now's the time to really sit and think about what it is that we want to do in our lives going forward, and be able to put those structures in place. Whether it is for you to think about getting new work, whether it is for you to look at your job and what you do and somehow do things differently within it, maybe break it apart and share that job with other people. Maybe find new work elsewhere in your company, the ones that are doing some skills that you want to, I guess, expand on. So this book was a real thought provoker and a highly recommended read. So it is A World Without Work, Technology, Automation and How We Should Respond by Daniel Susskind. It is was published in 2020, a very highly recommendable read. And I have also got my own notes that I have put into my blog post, and I will share that link in the description below. I've always wanted to say that. I've shared this link in the description below. Anyway, so please have a read of it. If you have read this book, please leave your comments below as to what you thought. What do you think are the challenges going forward in this new world of work? Are there any other books that you would strongly recommend that I read, or go along the same lines or the same route? Now, if you're also interested, I did do a previous review by Lynda Gratton last year on a book around the same themes, but this one was more focused on learning how to thrive and survive in a new challenging world, that focused on new skills and new learning and continual and lifelong learning. So if you want to read that, I'll also put that link in the description below. Read them together so you could see the different viewpoints. And I love how this is an economist view. Lynda Gratton's is another point of view, and I'm currently reading one which is a politician's point of view, and I'll have that review for you very soon. Okay then, bye for now.